Have you ever shot on a lens that turned your life into a movie? I always just try to achieve the wide look by cropping my videos to call it cinematic. But with anamorphic lenses, it just does it for you. I've been in search for something creative to pair up with the FX30, and I think this lens might be it. So I took it out for a spin while I was flying back and forth, and as usual, I wanted to test it out in low light to see if it looked good. It was quite the challenge because we were limited to f2.8, but we made it work by going into higher ISO values with the Sony FX30. So here's some day and nighttime shots from the Sirui 24mm anamorphic lens.
I know this movie is ending, but let me sit through the end credits. Remember the names and faces I loved, who always believed in who I'd become. The highs and the lows, the hellos and goodbyes that made up the scenes of this beautiful life. The lights will come on, it's almost time. Just let me sit through the end credits.
大家好, kumusta? My name is Victor, and in today's video, we are talking about the Sirui 24mm f2.8 anamorphic lens, and we're pairing it up with the Sony FX30, and this is a beast of a combo. This is my first anamorphic lens, and that if you are on the same boat and if you're not familiar with anamorphic lenses, it gives your footage really an interesting character, and it's really reminiscent of Hollywood films. And again, there's a lot of films shot on anamorphic, not necessarily the Sirui one, but really expensive ones like the Orion anamorphics and the Airy anamorphics as well. So most of the ones that I use in Hollywood are big and heavy anamorphic lenses, and Sirui, which is the budget and the smaller anamorphic lens, I don't know how they fit all the elements in here, but they made it work. Compared to the photo lenses that we are so used to, these are a little bit heavier and a little bit longer and bigger. But again, in its category, it's light, it's small for what it is. So I've shot everything just on the camera LCD, and since the FX30 doesn't have a D-squeeze function, I pretty much just eyeballed everything within focus or the framing as well, and that it just fills up the whole frame. It took a little bit to get used to, but it totally works out if you know kind of what it would look like in post. And that what I recommend for shooting with anamorphics is to have a monitor or a video app transmitter that can have a D-squeeze function, and since this one is times 1.33, you can see what it actually looks like rather than the stretched out version compared to what we have on the camera LCD. And using an anamorphic lens, it'll give you an interesting bokeh, and that it'll make the flares appear like lines. And for some people, this is what counts as cinematic. Things to know before shooting with anamorphic lenses. First is that the minimum focus distance is actually farther than the photo lenses that we're used to. It's because of how the optics are designed, but to combat this, all you have to do is use a diopter. And although I don't personally have a diopter with me, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that will teach you on how to use a diopter on an anamorphic lens. Second thing is that usually anamorphic lenses have slow apertures. This one, we have an f2.8. It's a little bit tough on low light. That's why we had to increase the ISO levels on the sample footage, but it totally can work. You just have to watch out for the noise. Sirui's other APS-C anamorphic lenses actually have faster apertures. They have f1.8, and those ones are pretty good in low light. Another thing to keep in mind is that anamorphic lenses isn't as tack sharp as the photo lenses that we're used to. But again, the lack of sharpness is a good trade-off to get the cinematic anamorphic characteristics that we're looking for in our videos. Let's talk about the build quality. This one is built like a tank. Full metal body construction, and the focus ring is perfectly smooth. Enough dampening, and that the aperture ring is clickless and that it has a heavy dampening in there. This is so that when you're manually handling the lens, you don't accidentally change the aperture while you're shooting. These lenses are also manual focus, so that you have to really rely on your focusing skills. Next up, I really want to compare this to a photo lens. We're going to compare it with a 24mm G Master lens from Sony, and that you're going to see how they differ from each other. One is going to be the spherical lens that we're all so used to, and one is this anamorphic lens. I want to talk about the distortion real quick, because I want to point out that even though it's not a fair comparison between the 24mm G Master lens, which is one of their best lenses out there from Sony, comparing to Sirui's anamorphic budget option, the lines on the Sirui is actually distorted. You can see it on the lines over here, and that it is quite drastically different. Again, if I'm shooting narratives or if I'm looking for an anamorphic look, this can be used as a creative choice, and that if you're using anamorphic lenses anyways, you're gonna get into a shoot knowing that this is a factor, this is a characteristics that appear on anamorphic lenses. So another thing that I found, I was watching Potato Jet's video about these lenses, and that he says that the de-squeeze factor is changing. So I compared it to the minimum focus distance and the 24mm photo lens versus another focusing distance a little bit on the background, and compared that again to the 24mm G Master lens, and to see if it actually does it. All right, so what would I use this for? First up, I think this anamorphic lens would be really good for fashion films. It's going to give you a really movie-like look, and that I feel like it's one of the best options that you can do for lower budget fashion films that can elevate your look just using this lens. Now, I don't usually shoot narratives or documentaries, so if you're shooting those types of videos, feel free to comment down below if you think this anamorphic lens would elevate your work in that industry. So I usually shoot product videos, corporate, commercial work, and branded social media content. Any industry out there, I think, can use anamorphic lenses if the style and the project brief calls for it. So how much is this 24mm f2.8 anamorphic lens from Sirui? Well, looking at the website right now, it's just over $1,000, and you can get $50 off if you use Victor50 at checkout. Now, Sirui offers a lot of characteristics in this lens despite its minor setbacks, but I think overall it's still a really good budget anamorphic lens pair up with the FX30. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about this lens and the footage that we shot in this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
너와 나